Pierre Le Gros was a French sculptor, active almost exclusively in Baroque Rome. Nowadays, his name is commonly written Legros. While he himself always signed as Le Gros, he is frequently referred to either as the Younger or Pierre II to distinguish him from his father, Pierre Le Gros the Elder, who was also a sculptor. The ardent drama of his work and its Italian location make him more an Italian than a French sculptor. Despite being virtually unknown to the general public today, he was the preeminent sculptor in Rome for nearly 2 decades, until he was finally superseded at the end of his life by the more classicizing Camillo Rusconi. Biography. Le Gros was born in Paris into a family with a strong artistic pedigree. His mother, died when he was only 3, but he stayed in close contact with her brothers, the sculptors Gaspard and Balthazar Marcy, whose workshop he frequented and eventually inherited at the age of 15. His artistic training, though, lay in the hands of his father, from whom he learned to sculpt, and his stepmother's father, Jean Laporta, who taught him to draw. Le Gros was awarded the prestigious Prix de Rome to study at the French Academy in Rome, where he renewed his close friendship with his cousin Pierre Laporta, also a sculptor and fellow at the Academy. His lodging there from 1690 to 1695 was a fruitful time but not untroubled, since the Academy was plagued by a constant financial crisis due to the high cost of Louis XIV's wars. The premises then were also a rather ramshackle affair and far from the grandeur the Academy would later enjoy after a move to the Villa Medici in the 19th century. Keen to prove himself by carving a marble copy after the antique, Le Gros was eventually granted permission to do so by the director of the Academy and his superior in Paris. His model was the so-called Vetturia, an ancient sculpture then in the garden of the Villa Medici in Rome. Finished in 1695, it was finally shipped to Paris some 20 years later and now stands in the Tuileries garden. The same year, 1695, Le Gros was ejected from the Academy after secretly preparing a model for a marble group on the altar of St. Ignatius of Loyola in the Gesù, the Roman mother church of the Jesuit order. In this most prestigious sculptural commission in Rome for decades, Le Gros was chosen to depict religion overthrowing heresy and hatred on the right-hand side of the altar, using a dynamic ensemble of 4 over-life-size marble figures. In the group, a towering young robed female figure of religion wielding a cross scatters the aged personifications of the vices, hatred and heresy. To one side, a putto tears apart a volume by the heretic Swiss reformer Zwingli, while a tome beneath the figure of heresy bears Luther's name. In 1697, with his sculptures nearly complete, he won a competition for the altar's main image, the silver statue of St. Ignatius. These, and other commissions he carried out concurrently, secured Le Gros' reputation, and further patronage led to the requirement for assistants and a larger workshop, which he found in a back wing of the Palazzo Farnese. Indeed, he was the busiest sculptor in Rome at the time, working for the Jesuits on the monumental relief of the Apotheosis of the Blessed Aloysius Gonzaga, while at the same time starting his extensive work for the Dominicans with the sarcophagus for Pope Pius V in Santa Maria Maggiore. In fact, he became the sculptor of choice for Antonin Cloche, the master of the Dominicans, carving first the tomb, and later the honorary statue of Cardinal Cassonate, and embarking on the task to produce with his St. Dominic the very first monumental statue of a founder of a religious order to adorn a niche in the nave of St. Peter's. It epitomizes his dynamic, mature style. The saint's ardor and authority are well conveyed, emphasized by the ample, skillfully handled sweep of his draperies. Already elected a member of the Accademia di San Luca in 1700, Legros also continued to be employed by several branches of the Jesuit order for work such as the statue of St. Francis Xavier in the Roman Church, of Sant'Apollinare, and the tableau-like and very effective rendering of the dying Stanislas Kostka in the Jesuit novitiate at Sant'Andrea al Quirinale. The latter statue in polychrome marble is today Legros' best-known work, but quite atypical, since his normal practice was to provoke naturalistic impressions by an extraordinarily fine surface treatment of a monochrome white marble. A few months earlier, he was commissioned to carve relief of Tobar and Gabel for the chapel of the Monte di Pietà in Rome. At some point after 1697, he was hired by Cardinal de Bouillon to create the main sculptural components for his family tomb in the Abbey of Cluny. Legros' work was completed by 1707 and sent to Cluny, where it arrived in 1709. Legros is here as French as he would ever be and invented a spectacular sepulchral monument, at once continuing in the French Baroque tradition and opening up new formal as well as iconological avenues. Alas, it was never to have any part in the development of tomb sculpture, because it was not even unpacked in Cluny, due to the fact that Bouillon so completely fell out with his cousin, the Sun King, that all tomb construction was stopped and the marbles and bronzes stored undisturbed in the sealed crates for nearly a century. The animated marble figures of the cardinal's parents, Frédéric Maurice de la Tour d'Auvergne and his wife, together with a battle relief and a winged genius, are today installed at the Hotel Dieu in Cluny, a fragment of the heraldic tower in Henry of the Abbey. Legros also participated in the major sculptural program of his day in Rome, the enterprise to fill Borromini's colossal colored marble niches in the Basilica of St. John Lateran with 12 heroic scaled figures of the apostles. This project employed some of the most prominent sculptors of Rome who were, however, made to follow the guidelines and in most cases drawings of the all-influential painter Carlo Maratta. Legros contributed St. Bartholomew, who displays his own flayed skin, and St. Thomas. The terracotta model for St. Thomas is radically different from the marble eventually produced and proves that in the initial phase of the project, Legros tried to challenge the imposed sober, classicizing style of Maratta with a powerful Baroque gesture that clearly refers back to Gian Lorenzo Bernini. As the overall unity of all the apostle statues in the Lateran Church was of paramount importance, this, in effect, was Legros' attempt to establish himself as the artistic leader of the Eternal City. The attempt failed and the classicizing vein of late Baroque prevailed. It must have been little consolation that Legros at least was the only sculptor involved who was not held to work from drawings by Maratta. In 1708-10 he collaborated with his close friend, the architect Filippo Uvara, in the creation of the Cappella Ant'Amore in the Church of San Girolamo della Carita, Rome, where his statue of San Filippo Neri is set against a large backlit colored glass window. Between about 1709 to 1713 Legros was in charge of the monument of Pope Gregory XV and his cardinal nephew Ludovico Ludovici, again in the Church of Sant'Ignazio, where pre-eminent was also brought in to sculpt two fami. 1711 to 1714 followed the Cappella di Francesco di Paola in S. Giacomo degli Incurabili, for which he was the architect and the sculptor of a large relief. But by then, his star had started to decline rapidly. First, he managed to alienate the Jesuits in 1713 by stubbornly repeating his proposal to transfer his own statue of Stanislaus Kostka into the church of Sant'Andrea al Quirinale as a centerpiece for the newly decorated chapel of the Blessed Stanislas. Then, all the efforts of French officials to convince the king to pay for another apostle statue in the Lateran and employ Legros to make it, led to nothing. He would finally have to recognize that he was fighting a losing battle against Rusconi, who was by then clearly favored by Pope Clement XI. In 1714 his father died in Paris and Legros himself was close to death's door, suffering from gallstones. In order to have an operation done and also to settle his inheritance, in 1715 they traveled to Paris, where he stayed with his friend, the patron and collector Pierre Crozat, whose cabinet in his Parisian house and chapel in his country retreat at Montmorency Legros decorated, but he was disappointed to be rebuffed by the Academy and returned to Rome in 1716. Here the last sad chapter of his life opened promptly when he sided with some dissidents who opposed the introduction of new rules at the Accademia di San Luca which subjected non-members to great financial injustice, and he was unceremoniously expelled. This meant that he was then unable to carry out any more public commissions in Rome in his own right. The rich Roman art market was effectively closed for him and he had to settle for a few works outside, namely some statues for the Benedictine Abbey at Monte Cassino and, without doubt due to the intervention of Uvara who was by then architect to the Duke of Savoy, 2 female saints for the Church of S. Christina in Turin. Embittered, Legros died from pneumonia in 1719 and was buried in the French National Church in Rome. Only in 1725, under the directorship of the painter Giuseppe Chiari, was he posthumously rehabilitated and reinstated as a member of the Accademia di San Luca.